Sponsors and people who are probably just now realizing they're in the wrong room. Thank you for coming today. Thank you for taking time out of your busy schedules to come here. We've spent the last 3 months working very hard, very diligently on all the projects that some of you in here have sponsored, and we greatly appreciated you giving us these projects. We have 5 presentations for you today, and I think I speak on behalf of the whole class when I say we are very excited to show you what we've done. So, without further ado, let's get started. Oh, and I want to say, you are not allowed to fall asleep during these presentations because Holly told us we couldn't either. So, all right, without further ado, we are the Menards Capstone team. Our project was application-centric segmentation with Cisco ACI and Fortinet. Just a couple introductions.
My name is Jeremy Wolf. I was the team lead for this capstone, and just until recently, I finished a 2-year internship with Menards.
My name is Tanner. I was the other network admin on this project, and I just finished almost a full year internship with Menards.
Hi, my name is Adam Brenner. I did not work at Menards, but I was a security specialist in this project.
My name is Daniel Baker. I was the automation specialist for this project, and I'm currently at a year and a half with Menards.
And just a quick shout out, our project, as you may know, was sponsored by Menards. And Justin Yarrington oversaw our project along with Kevin Wagner, who couldn't be here today. Justin is the infrastructure lead at Menards, and Kevin was the network lead. So, on to the project. Before giving us this project, Menards was having some issues or had some worries about security and agility in their data center. And they wanted to solve those issues using Cisco ACI and Fortinet Unified Threat Management. So, for the project, they wanted us to do 3 things with Cisco ACI and Fortinet. Those 3 things were segmentation, integration, and automation. They wanted us to use Cisco ACI to segment the data center network, and then they wanted us to integrate Fortinet Unified Threat Management into Cisco ACI to create a single point to manage everything, and then they wanted us to automate the deployment process to make it fast and efficient. So some of you may be asking, what is ACI? ACI is application-centric infrastructure. And that is Cisco's view for future data center networks. It's a culmination of everything that used to be used to manage data centers. So now, I'll turn it over to Adam to talk about our project's topology.
Yeah. So our physical topology consists of 3 Nexus 9300 series switches in a standard spine and leaf configuration. We also have a FortiGate 600C firewall, which is acting as the main level of security for this network. We also have 3 servers acting as web, app, and database in this network. And then, of course, we have our APIC, which is the Application Policy Infrastructure Controller, which is way too much of a mouthful, so we'll just call it the APIC, which is running ACI and is the central management point for our entire network. Here we have a pretty high level view of how the traffic is supposed to flow through our network. So our traffic will start somewhere out in the internet. Maybe it's a client that's trying to reach Menards' website to view their account. The first thing that they'll interact with will be our firewall. We want to make sure that their traffic doesn't have any malicious intent before it gets into our network. So now that we've cleared it the first time, we're going to send it over to our web server so they can start to view their account. Again, we want to make sure that even the request from the web server that's going internally is not in any way malicious, so it's going to retrack off of the firewall once again. Now that everything has been validated, we're okay to send it right over into our network. Since the application and database servers are purely internal, we have a contract that just allows them to communicate freely between themselves, since we have no worry about what kind of information they pass between each other. Now that everything's been validated, we're okay to go from the database and send our information right back over to the client, and now they can view their account. Next, we're going to pass it off to Jeremy to talk about some more traditional networking.
So, in traditional networking in a 3-tiered environment, let's say if you had someone trying to attack your environment, say, oh, I don't know, a hacker man. If you were to send a malicious request to your web server, due to how traditional networking works, That request, once at the web server, would be able to replicate and attack both your app and database servers, officially making everything vulnerable. So what we look to do with ACI is to secure our environment, and how ACI does that is through segmentation using contracts. Now look at the same environment again, 3 tiers and a hacker man. The hacker man launches his attack on the web server. The web server can be infected, but that's generally okay. There's no critical information on this web server. It goes to replicate itself, and it goes to attack the app and database. Cisco ACI sees that there's no contract there and says, hold up, I'm stopping you from going to the app and database. That keeps information secure and stops the hacker man. So here is a high-level overview of every contract within Cisco ACI. These are the ones that we built over the past 4 months working on this Capstone project. There's lots of arrows, lots of numbers, lots of letters. It's very confusing, so I'm going to make it simple for you. Here's one contract. Specifically, this contract allows traffic to pass from the application server to the database server. If you'll remember, Adam said earlier, communication will flow freely between the two, and this is the contract that allows that to happen. Now I'm going to go into a live demo on how we create contracts and deploy them, specifically for the app and database servers. Our live demo is going to be up here on your right-hand side. If you notice, I have 2 windows pulled up here. Those windows are going to be my application and my database server, and they're trying to communicate to each other. Because there is not a contract in place to allow this communication, ACI by default says no communication will pass. So now we're going to create that contract. Here is our APIC controller. This is what controls everything within the data center. And this is where we're going to create those contracts and apply them. Firstly, we're going to create the contract. And now it's going to ask us for a name. So I'm going to name it App Database, because that's what we're trying to create a contract for. And then after you give it a name, you have to tell it what kind of information that it wants to allow, similar to a firewall. And in this case, we're going to allow ICMP or ping, because that is how we test reachability between the 2 devices. So we're going to call this ICMP, and we're going to filter it to allow ICMP. Now that this contract is created, we have to apply it to both the app server and the database server. So now I'm going to do that. First with the app server. I'm going to look for the contract that we just created, the app database contract, and I'm going to apply it. Save with database. And now that the contract is applied, communication will be able to flow between each of them. And as you can see, we already have communication going. So that is how you create a contract. That is how you get communication working through ACI. That is how segmentation works. And now I'm going to hand it back over to Adam, who's going to talk about firewall integration.
All right. So another part of this project was our firewall integration. So some of the reasons that you want to integrate a firewall into ACI is to just increase the scope of management that you have with ACI. Currently, ACI is what is managing and controlling our entire network, so it only seems logical that we want to put the firewall in there as well to just increase that scope. Another reason is when you actually integrate your Fortinet firewall into ACI, it creates a virtual domain between the two, which not only increases the level of security, but it actually, interestingly enough, creates segments inside of the firewall that can each be individually configured for every virtual domain that you create on the firewall. So according to Cisco and Fortinet, you should pretty much just have to download a package, plug in your firewall, and you should be good to go. And things will just integrate perfectly and you'll be on your way. Unfortunately, even though we were able to get everything up and running, it took a lot of time and it was nowhere near what Cisco and Fortinet were kind of advertising. Because of that, we also looked into some alternatives. Since the time that it took was so high and it took a lot of work, we thought of some other alternatives that might be just as viable when you're actually implementing a firewall.
One alternative would be to use an unmanaged firewall. This is similar to the managed firewall inside of Cisco ACI. However, Cisco ACI cannot control the firewall, meaning that there's another point of management to be had on the network. It also leaves more points of failure because it is, again, one person configuring the firewall, whereas ACI knows exactly what it needs to do to configure it. Another thing that could theoretically work is to try and trick ACI. We spent about a day trying to put the web server off of ACI while still being on ACI. It was very confusing, and a lot of theory went involved into it, but at the end of the day, it was very hard to trick the machine, so we kind of put a stop to that. Our overall recommendation to Menards is to use this fully integrated firewall. It will give them the most security involved with their network, rather than an unmanaged or trying to trick ACI. Now Danny's going to talk a little bit about automation.
Thank you. So as you can see by this graph, it's a little silly, but it kind of goes to show what automation is like. It makes a really mundane, tedious task simple and easy as a click of a button. So that's a pro. A con of automation is that it's instantaneous. You can really cause a lot of damage too with the click of a button. It's really hard, or it can be really hard to revert back from those damages too. So some of the tools that we decided to use for automation, this was the main tool. It's called Postman. It's not your mail carrier service. It's actually an API developer tool, and it is our main cling to it is that it's completely free. So you can do a lot of things within it that you would have to pay elsewhere to do, all for free. Another nice thing about it is that it is very easy to be organized within it. You'll see it in the live demo, but there are collections that show every script that you have there, right in front of you. And then another thing about it is you can use different languages, such as JSON or XML, and that is another main pointer to it. Another tool that we used was the API Inspector tool. This was a tool right within ACI that was included. So anytime that you're within the APIC and a dialog box pops up, or anytime you make a click, this box will populate with how it got that information and where it accessed that information, as seen by the method and URL. The third and final tool that we used was also within ACI. It is called the Object Store Browser, and it just shows within ACI all of the variables that you'll need to be able to automate this process. And it is very easy to use and, again, built right within ACI. So I'm going to quick show you some automation of this project. It'll be up on this screen. So this is what Postman looks like. I'm actually going to go inside to the ACI APIC here. And to be able to do anything within ACI, first I need a key generated for me to log into this machine. So I'm just going to do that quick. And I'm hiding my username and password so you guys don't hack us like Jeremy mentioned. So I just got a key generated there. So now I'm able to do everything within ACI. So quickly, I'm just going to build kind of a small environment to be able to do this test for you guys. So this pretty much is doing all of what we did within 4 months, 3 months, within the click of a few buttons. As you can see on the left-hand side, that stuff is being created. So I'm just going to pull open this newly created test tenant here and pull open all the spots that I will be creating things, such as EPGs and contracts. So another nice thing about Postman here is you can upload a CSV file and do multiple different instances of automation, again, with the click of a button, all with this tool called the Runner tool. So what we thought about the most practical usage of automation in this environment is if the server team would say, hey, we need to patch in these 4 servers, can you enable these ports for us? And like Jeremy mentioned earlier, ACI automatically blocks the ports until they're configured. So I'm going to just select my CSV file there. And as you can see, there's 4 iterations. And I'm going to scroll down, or I'm going to pick the runner that I'm going through. And I'm going to run it. You should see stuff on the left-hand side populated. So everything was just created there. And Jeremy showed his one contract that he just created. I just created 8 with the click of a button. just kind of showing you how much time that saves with automation. Alright, so the next part of our project is kind of the time spent. We used a free tool called Toggle, and it is actually a Kickstarter. It's very user-friendly. We're all able to use it on our own PCs and kind of clock in, so to speak, and log our time for this project. And as you can see, those are some of the top tasks, all put into a pie chart. Top runner is firewall integration, kind of like Adam mentioned. It took a lot of time to get that working. My favorite one up there is crying over ACI. That was a big one up there. It took 4 hours. So then another nice tool about it too is it shows the total time spent between all of us. As you can see, it's about 200 hours, give or take. And it shows how much work we put in each month, which is awesome. So then we're all going to come together and just talk about some of the lessons learned and what we learned about this project.
So I can say that I certainly learned quite a bit throughout my time in the program and throughout this project. The biggest thing that I learned was how long it can take to learn something. Sometimes it took me quite a while to get the basis of networking down, and then one day it just clicked. And the same thing happened with this project. I didn't understand it, and then it clicked. You just have to keep working on it to learn it as best as you can.
One thing that I learned was that you can't be afraid to ask questions. ACI, data centers, these are all new things to us at our 4 years at UW Stout. We really didn't learn much about ACI, so we came in not knowing what to expect. It was very helpful for me to know that the full-timers at Menards, they were always there for me to ask questions to. I didn't feel silly asking them questions, and they were always very helpful. And it means a lot, actually, that now that the project's over, that they're the ones coming to me with the questions, and I'm giving them the answers.
So kind of like previous guys have mentioned, we didn't know much or anything about ACI going into this project. And kind of like over the course of my career here at Stout, I've learned so much about general networking. One of the cool things that I was able to do is actually teach my intro professor, Scott Patzel, who we all know and love. He actually asked me questions about ACI and I was able to explain to him with confidence what ACI was.
And then probably the big thing that I learned is that you won't always be able to just Google the answer. You can't just Google something. There might not be documentation out there for everything. And throughout the 4 years here at Stout, we really are taught how to figure things out on your own. And that really came into play when I was playing around with getting that firewall fully integrated. There was not much documentation on it, but after spending a lot of time, you really figure things out. And pretty cool. So once again, we'd like to thank everyone for coming and everyone for listening. We'd like to thank our sponsor Menards once again. Without you guys, we wouldn't have been able to do anything in this project, and we've really learned a lot. We'd also like to thank the CNIT Board of Advisors for taking your time out of your day for coming. We'd like to thank Holly Yuan, our program advisor, and our professor for doing all that you've done. We'd also like to thank Sam Waska, our lab intern, for everything that you've done for us. So with that, we'd like to send it off to some questions.
What happened?